At the start of 2026, CCP leadership was shaken by major developments. Reports surrounding Zhang Youxia, a longtime political ally of Xi Jinping and vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, have now been officially confirmed. Authorities are said to have placed the entire military on the highest level of readiness and halted all troops' movements to prevent any possible counteraction by forces linked to Zhang. Former U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency Director General Michael Flynn commented that a coup is unfolding inside China. On January 24th, CCP Politburo member and Central Military Commission Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia, along with Central Military Commission member and Joint Staff Department Chief Liu Zhenli, were placed under investigation. As a result, 5 of the 7 members of the 20th Central Military Commission have now fallen, leaving only Xi Jinping and Zhang Shenming, few generals personally promoted by Xi, remain in place. These investigations signal that the Central Military Commission formed at the end of 2022 has been almost entirely purged, making an unprecedented moment in the CCP's history. According to multiple sources, after the announcement of the downfall, the military ordered a halt to all deployments in order to prevent any retaliation by Zhang Youxia's close allies. Such a measure is rarely seen in past cases and is typically associated with major crises, such as a coup threat or an external invasion. On X, a post shared by a user described these developments in detail and included a photo said to show Zhang Youxia's residence in Beijing on the night of January 21st, with plainclothes personnel surrounding the area. The blurred night image appears to show several figures near a red gate, creating an atmosphere of heightened tension. The post also claimed that Zhang's operational background was unique within the military and argued that his removal could raise concerns about a possible conflict in the Taiwan Strait. Before this, online reports that Zhang Youxia had been detained had already been spreading widely. Independent commentator Cai Shengkun posted on X on January 23rd saying the reports that Zhang Youxia and 17 senior military officers had been detained were absolutely accurate. He named figures including General Liu Zhenli, General Xiao Tianliang, and Lieutenant General Zhong Xiaojun, and said the Ministry of Public Security's Security Unit, the Central Guard Bureau, and the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection took part in the operation. He described it as a major military upheaval and claimed more lieutenant generals, major generals, and even division-level officers will be detained next. He also said Zhang and his family had already been arrested. Rumors that Zhang had been detained began cultivating widely on January 20th after he did not appear at the opening of a Beijing seminar for provincial and ministerial level officials focused on the 20th Party Congress's 4th plenum. State-run media CCTV footage indicated that 5 prominent figures were absent: Zhang Youxia, Liu Zhenli, Organization Department Head Shi Taifeng, Vice Premier He Lifeng, and Politburo member Ma Xingrui. Reports that the Central Military Commission's first vice chairman had been detained have sent an extremely dangerous political signal and have drawn attention from the U.S. military and intelligence community. General Michael Flynn, who previously served as director of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency and as a national security advisor, reposted Tai Shengkun's post on January 23rd. He wrote, "Breaking, ongoing CCP/China coup d'etat. There appears to be great unrest inside the CCP and its military leadership. These are coup-like conditions, and the consequences will impact U.S. foreign policy, our U.S. military posture in the Indo-Pacific region, and overall U.S. relations going forward." He also issued a warning to Xi Jinping, General Secretary Xi, "Get ready because the unrest inside of China will not end well." After Chinese authorities announced that Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli had fallen, former Inner Mongolia official Du Ren acted on January 24th in a social media program exclaiming, "My God, this has turned the entire Chinese military upside down." Du Wen said that based on reports from inside China, Zhang Youxia and Joint Staff Department Chief Liu Zhenli allegedly planned to mobilize forces against Xi Jinping under the banner of saving the party and the nation, but the plan was reportedly exposed by someone close to them. He claimed the leak may have come from a deputy chief of staff and said that many generals promoted by Zhang were subsequently brought under control. He said the existing command structure associated with the former general staff system has now been suspended, with the Central Military Commission reportedly issuing direct orders via encoded telegrams. He added that the entire military has been placed on the highest level of readiness and that all deployments have been immediately frozen and halted. He also claimed that officers and soldiers were required to hand in their phones and take part in centralized political study. Du Wen argued that this could become the most severe and far-reaching purge in the history of the Chinese Communist Party and the broader international communist movement. He said it also reflects a direct structural breakdown within the party's military system, and claimed the scale of Xi Jinping's crackdown has exceeded that of Stalin and Mao Zedong. He warned that retaliation by figures linked to Zhang could occur at any time and suggested the situation could escalate into violence targeting China's top leadership. He strongly advised friends in Beijing to go out as little as possible and to avoid the Chang'an's Avenue corridor in particular. He warned that a large-scale military breakdown could occur at any time and that China's political situation could shift suddenly, with Xi Jinping potentially facing severe consequences. A TV roundtable program host, Wang Hao, commented on X that the investigations into Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli confirmed another round of purges within the military. He said that this was not an anti-corruption effort, but a preemptive strike against potential disloyalty. Wang argued that Xi has lost confidence in the command system and chose to move first, a move he said could create a chilling effect in the ranks, elevate loyalty over professional competence, and leave instability unresolved, potentially increasing regional risks. Lawyer You Feizhu also posted remarks urging senior officers to oppose Xi and return authority to the public, warning that otherwise they would face further internal purges. He addressed military personnel directly, calling for resistance to what he described as increasingly oppressive rule. At age 75, Zhang Youxia has deep family ties to Xi Jinping. Zhang's father, Zhang Zhongxun, a founding general of the People's Republic, and Xi's father, Xi Zhongxun, were both senior party veterans from Shanxi. This shared family background laid the groundwork for early connections between the two men. As members of the so-called second generation of revolutionaries, they shared similar political culture and life experiences, a factor that often creates a sense of natural closeness within the party system. During the early years of Xi Jinping's rule and his consolidation of power, Zhang was widely seen as a key supporter and ally within the military. With Xi's backing, Zhang rose steadily to the position of vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, becoming the highest-ranking officer after Xi himself. This ascent reflected the high level of trust Xi once placed on Zhang to help maintain control over the armed forces. After Zhang's fall, the top ranks of the military leadership were left almost entirely cleared out. The sweeping purge has brought Xi's control over the military to its strongest point so far, but it also carries a risk of triggering broader repercussions. What impact could Zhang Youxia's downfall have on Taiwan? Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli were widely regarded as central figures in the military and were seen as two of the few senior commanders in the Chinese system with battlefield experience. Both reportedly had brief involvement in the broader conflict between China and Vietnam. But Zhang's relatively cautious stance has drawn particular attention. He was said to have expressed reservations in internal settings about using force to take Taiwan, a position that contrasts sharply with the tougher line associated with Xi Jinping. In 2024, Zhang published an article in the People's Daily that pointed to a range of shortcomings within the military, including weaknesses in senior leadership, problems in wartime coordination between the military and civilians, and gaps that limit the ability to carry out large-scale joint operations. He argued that if current trends continued, the military would be unlikely to build sufficient capability before 2027 to take Taiwan by force. Some analysts said that this amounted to a public challenge to Xi Jinping's goal for using force against Taiwan by 2027. Several sources described as close to China's military said Zhang repeatedly opposed taking immediate military action in internal meetings. They claimed he argued that Taiwan's defensive system was second only to Israel and stronger than Ukraine's. Ahead of the annual two sessions, he reportedly warned that the likelihood of intervention by the United States, Japan, Australia, and the Five Eyes are extremely high, and that a prolonged campaign could spark domestic instability. He also reportedly said the current force structure and logistic would struggle to sustain a long war. People familiar with the matter said Zhang favored keeping the situation stable and avoiding a conflict while the economy was weak and China faced diplomatic isolation. They said Xi viewed this stance as undermining military morale and that it became a trigger for later purges within the officer corps. Now, those voices have largely disappeared, potentially making it easier for Xi to press a tougher line. Especially amidst economic pressure and rising nationalist sentiment, tensions in the Taiwan Strait have already been heightened by frequent mainland military exercises. And this downfall could further encourage Beijing to display force as a way to shift attention from internal strains. An Australian-based social media commentator, Zhang Wanzhen, claimed this operation was a form of retaliation by Xi Jinping. He said Zhang Youxia and Xi once had a very strong relationship, but Zhang disrupted the balance of power within the military. Jiang claimed Xi wanted Zhang to step down earlier so that commanders He Weidong and Zhang Shenming could move up. But Zhang refused and even moved against He Weidong and other military officers aligned with Xi, such as He Hongjun and Zhong Xiaojun. Jiang said the speed with which Xi moved to remove Zhang was surprising. He also said that based on the information he previously received from within the system, Xi would not abandon the idea of taking action against Taiwan simply because military figures who understand warfare oppose it. In recent years, the CCP has also been accumulating gold and silver. Does this suggest Xi has decided or is preparing to use force against Taiwan? If war breaks out, the US and Europe would be expected to impose sanctions on China, and overseas holdings in US dollars and euros would be frozen. The argument presented here is that gold would be the only major asset seen as able to avoid such measures. A similar claim is made about Russia, which accumulated gold for several years before the war. Data shows that China's central bank has continued to increase its gold reserves. By the end of 2025, those reserves were reported at about 2,300 metric tons, with increases recorded over 14 consecutive months. The text also claims that China imposed export controls on silver starting January 1st, restricting silver exports and signaling an effort to stockpile or control supply, alongside the assertion that China refines 70 to 80% of the world's silver. Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine in early 2022, its gold reserves were reported at about 2,298 metric tons. The comparison presented here is that China's recent holdings are similar, with both figures around 2,300 tons. US intelligence assessment are also described as viewing China as stockpiling strategic materials, including food, energy, and inputs for chip production, while increasing the intensity of its actions. Examples cited include more frequent military exercises around Taiwan, blockade drills, or rehearsals involving offshore islands. But the successive downfall of dozens of senior military officers and defense industry executives has fueled doubts about Beijing's ability to build a force capable of confronting Western militaries. A recent Pentagon assessment said that the removal of a large number of officers is highly likely to disrupt the military's combat effectiveness in the short term. A researcher at Taiwan's Institute of National Defense and Security Research, Ming Shi-shen, said the detentions may be tied to allegations that Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli sought to use military authority to pressure Xi Jinping to step down during the 2 sessions or a 5th plenum. Shen argued that after Xi obtained evidence, he moved quickly to strike first by detaining Zhang and Liu, aiming to eliminate the military backing of anti-Xi forces. Mr. Shen said the Defense Ministry's notice about the 2 detentions stated that the action was taken after study by the CCP Central Committee, which he interpreted as a party-led operation rather than one initiated through the legal system, the state, or the military. He said this reflects an internal power struggle and could have wide-ranging consequences. Shen added that if commanders aligned with Xi, such as Miao Hua and He Weidong, had remained in place, Xi might have pressed them to prepare for action against Taiwan. But he noted that they have fallen on corruption allegations and that the broader scale of corruption in the military makes it difficult for Beijing to launch such an operation in the short term. He argued that after moving against the military's main anti-Xi forces, Xi would first focus on securing a smooth continuation of his leadership at the 21st Party Congress in 2027. The fallout from Zhang Youxia's downfall has triggered ripple effects in China's political arena in early 2026. It not only signals an escalation of Xi's military purges, but also underscores deep turmoil within the People's Liberation Army. A document titled An Open Letter to the People has spread rapidly online, claiming to come from anti-Xi figures inside the CCP and urging the public to rise up. While its origin has not been independently verified, the document's message focuses squarely on the core of an elite power struggle, touching on military loyalty, factional purges, and broader public discontent. The letter claims that Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli were placed under formal investigation and argues this was not simply an anti-corruption case, but a blatant struggle for power at the top. It also says Zhang and Liu were once seen as key military stabilizers during Xi Jinping's early rise, but are now being treated as leaders of anti-Xi factions and openly detained. The document alleges that their families and subordinates were drawn into the fallout and described actions such as surveillance around a Beijing residence, searches of offices, and the detentions of associates in Shanxi. The document then lists what it describes as abuse of power by Xi Jinping. It accuses him of using anti-corruption campaigns to eliminate rivals, promoting a national rejuvenation narrative to justify personal rule, and invoking common prosperity while harming private wealth. It points to the social and economic toil of the pandemic years and property market collapse, rising youth unemployment, and growing public frustration. It also criticizes China's foreign policy, economic direction, and domestic controls, portraying these developments collectively as a serious human rights crisis. The letter then addresses what it calls brothers in the military, particularly those with close ties to Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli. It warns that today's detentions could be followed by further actions against others, and argues that the armed forces are being placed in a moral dilemma. The document urges military personnel to reflect on their role at what it describes as a critical moment, asserting that the military becomes decisive when political repression reaches an extreme. The document uses high-charged language, calling for an uprising and portraying it as a means of self-protection, national salvation, and justice. Beyond its appeal to military personnel, it also urges workers to halt production and demonstrate, and calls on farmers to join what it describes as a mass movement. This document has circulated widely across overseas Chinese language media outlets and social platforms, drawing international attention. Some analysts argue that Xi Jinping now lacks trusted figures within the military, leaving the armed forces without a clear center of authority. They suggest that growing suspicion and fragmentation could heighten the risk of internal conflict, and warn that China's political situation may enter a period of extreme volatility till its ending.